Hello and welcome to another Smaulgld live stream. It is Friday night, November 16th, 2018, and tonight the episode is Stunning Changes in Silver Demand. We're going to talk about the mix and the change in the demand for silver among jewelry, silverware, coins and bars, and industrial silver metal. Tonight we're going to focus solely on silver demand, and then tomorrow night we're going to do Smaulgld Saturday Night Silver, and we're going to talk about some silver stockpiles once again, but in a different context, and we'll let you know tomorrow what the topic is. But first, let's take a look what happened in the markets today before we get into these stunning changes in silver demand. So the first thing I want to look at is the gold price. I always like to look at the gold price and the silver price every day, and we seem to be holding steady now above 1200 for gold and above 14 for silver. And gold closed at 1221. It had gotten as high as 12 and a quarter, and it opened much lower. So it was up $8 or so. It was a decent day, up 0.67%. Over at silver, let's check out what happened over at the silver price. And silver also went up about the same percentage, about 0.83. And a nice little spike at the open, got up to 1440, and it basically closed there at 1439. So given that both the gold and silver prices closed about the same in terms of percentage increase, we saw a little bit of a decrease in the gold-silver ratio that you're seeing right there now. The gold-silver ratio is at 84.86, coming down a little bit, coming down just a little bit over the last couple of weeks. It had gotten as high as almost 86 to 1. Still, it's been spending a lot of time above 80 to 1. Now, over at the equities, it was a bit of a flat day, but Dow did manage to get up. It was mixed, I would say. The Dow did manage to get up 0.5%, up 123 points, and got to 25,413. The NASDAQ down 11. That was down about 0.15%, pretty much flat. That's at 7246. S&P 500 eked out a 0.22% gain at 6 points up at 2736. So the gold and the silver have gone up now the last couple of days and have established themselves above the 14 threshold for silver and above the 1200 for gold. Oil also rebounded a bit to $56.83 a barrel. And let's check out now what else happened during the day. We're still having these election issues, the election results coming in. It looks like this guy in Georgia is going to win, the Republican. Stacey Abrams, the Democrat, she didn't concede, but she basically, I guess, threw in the towel. Not conceding the race, but saying she understood she was going to lose, but she didn't accept it because she thinks there was fraud. Over on the Florida side, it looks like the two Republicans for governor and for Senator DeSantis and Rick Scott will win despite the long period of time for the recount. Now, what you have on both sides, we're not going to get into this tonight, but this has to be solved. You have the Democrats complaining that there is voter suppression and the Republicans claiming that there is voter fraud. Briefly, suppression is when you look at the voter rolls and you purge people off it because you think maybe there's dead people on it, people that are not eligible to vote, or for whatever reason, according to the rules of that state, they have to re-register every few years, so they take them off the roll. They call that voter suppression. And because people are in charge of that process, it's possible that that does happen. Now, on the voter fraud side, it's a bit more complicated, but it's the same thing. People are in charge of handing out ballots, same-day registration, people filing provisional ballots, not filling out their ballots completely, people perhaps voting twice, and that's voter fraud. Now, the Democrats say that the Republicans engage in voter fraud. Republicans say that the Democrats engage in voter fraud, and the Democrats say that the Republicans engage in voter suppression. And both sides argue that it's impossible, when they're not doing it, to commit fraud or to commit this voter suppression. So that's something that has to be sorted out, because someone raised an interesting point in the comments. They were talking about how would the dollar lose some of its value or confidence if this type of electioneering or the not trusting the results were to be more widespread. And I think you are starting to see that, because Stacey Abrams basically said, yeah, I'm going to lose, but I know why I'm going to lose, and I don't believe the election was conducted properly. That is, some would call it sour grapes, but others would call it a stinging indictment in the lack of trust in the system. And you have the same thing going on in Florida. People, when they see boxes of votes being carried from one place to the other, being found in a Avis rent-a-card, again, undermines the confidence. Now, these are two states, and what they've done is they say, well, it's Florida, and it's just Broward County that did this. Georgia, you could say, well, it's just one state. Again, that'll have to be something that needs to be worked out, but this issue raised its head back in 2016 when Trump said he wasn't going to accept the election results because he thought, at the time, he was saying things are rigged, things are fixed. And Hillary Clinton took him to task and said, well, that's not democracy. That's a threat to our democracy when you don't accept the results of a just election. Obama says, what do you even mean? You can't fiddle with an election. And then as soon as the election was over, they said, oh, yeah, well, the Russians fiddled with the election. And now Hillary's saying that Miss Abrams should have won, but for the fraud. Now, the reason that's problematic is not to highlight the hypocrisy of Hillary Clinton or Obama. It's just that they were on the side that there was no fraud. And now they, too, are saying there's a possibility of fraud, which means that both sides are admitting that there's fraud, even though they try to claim sometimes that there is no fraud, and it's something that has to be worked out. Or I think there will be some undermining, not necessarily just of the democracy, but of the value of the dollar. All right, well, let's see what else we got before we get into our topic of stunning changes in silver demand. We've got the charts to show it. All right, well, let's get into our topic. Uh-oh, we got a moron here.
Presenting the distinguished international news commentator and foreign correspondent.
This has been an extraordinary week in world affairs.
No, I told Hillary Clinton that that's moronic.
All right. Oh, quickly, I just see a comment from Pablo Pena. The other thing that happened today was Mr. Acosta, the CNN reporter who was tossed out of one of the press conferences that the president had the day after the midterm elections, has been reinstated by I think it's a district court judge in Washington, D.C. But I think that what's going to happen is the court basically said he was thrown out without having the proper due process. And I think what they're going to do now is come up with rules and protocol as to when your turn is up and what happens. And I suppose if they write the rules correctly, they'll write them precisely to handle the situation where Jim Acosta asked a question and then he was told, okay, next, and he refused to give up the microphone. I think at that point they can point to, once they have the new rules in place, that is a breach of decorum, and either if he persists or any recalcitrant reporter persists, Trump said he'll just walk away from the press conference, or they will have that reporter ejected. So we'll follow up on that. It'll be interesting to see what happens when Mr. Jim Acosta returns to the press conferences and how he handles his first round of questioning, if he even gets called on. All right, now let's look at this silver. And Silver Fortune says, I can't decide if this title is supposed to be sarcastic or serious this time. Well, with me, there's always a healthy dose of sarcasm, but also substance. And we're going to go through the substance. And of course, this is somewhat of a stunning change in silver demand, but it's more for you to figure out what the implications are of this. So last year, the year before, but for the last 2 or 3 years, I had done a very extensive silver report at the end of each year. And in that report, I went through in real detail the silver demand from all the mints, as much as I can get publicly available information from, or had a right to the mints. I used the Silver Institute's data. I used the United States Geological Survey for the amount of mining that was done. Did a lot of research on the supply and demand and put together a 30 or 40 page report, maybe 50 some odd charts in it. And then I even did a video companion to that report. And the reason I've been doing that for the last 3 years is you hear this cherry-picked narrative. Silver is so useful. It is running out. Silver is rarer than gold. And they don't have any of the numbers. Silver is used in electronics, and everyone is using electronics. And silver is used in solar panels. And solar panel use is going to explode over the next 20 years, and they are going to run out of silver. Okay, so what I did was I went through all of substantive sarcasm. That's exactly what it is. So I went through all this data, and I find that not necessarily when you talk about the use of silver. So, for example, in the demand for silver for use in electronics, in 2010, 301 million ounces of silver were used. And in 2017, just 242 million ounces were used. Now that shows that you can't make general statements that everyone is going to be using electronics. There are more and more electronics being made every day, and silver is the key in all of them. Without silver, we could not lead our lives. All that kind of stuff, that's generalities. What's happening with silver use in electronics is they figure out how to use less of it, or the silver that's used, there's less of it because the electronics are smaller. Smaller devices, you need less circuitry, you need less silver. It's the same with silver for solar. You don't just extrapolate the amount of silver that was used in 2007 in the solar panel and say, well, the solar panel usage and the solar panel production is going to increase by tenfold, and therefore we just take the silver that was used in 2007 and multiply it by 10. Wrong goes star. There is a thrifting that goes on in the production of silver panels. There's innovations that go on. There's ways of using less silver. And of course, that's what's happening. So while we have seen a massive increase in solar panel production and usage, in 2011, they used 75.8 million ounces of silver. In 2017 for the production of solar panels. In 2017, 6 years later, when they really have ramped up production, they only used 94 million ounces. So this idea that somehow we are in this period of time of massive use and adoption of silver, remember, with that adoption and use, they are using it in military devices. They are using it. They just keep telling you all where they're using it, but they're not quantifying how much silver is used. Then they're going to use it in electric cars, but they don't know how much. They don't say how much. If they do know, they don't want to tell you because it's not that much. So here are the stunning developments. The stunning developments are not solar energy is going to cause massive demand. Electronics are going to cause massive demand. Silver is so useful in our lives and we can't live without it causing massive demand. No, that's not the stunning issue. Here's what's stunning. For the longest period of time, from the 90s to 2000 to 2006, the industrial demand for silver was about 70%. Now, this is all the period of time post-demonetization of silver. This is a period of time when silver is not being used for the mintages of coins. No country is issuing coins in the 90s or the early 2000s that people use in transactions. So you don't have the demand for silver to make coins. So in 1964, a big year for silver demand in the United States, when they made silver dimes, quarters, and half dollars, they used 550 million ounces that year. That was a big year, twice or three times the amount that they normally use, because they were trying to flood the market with those 90% coins so people wouldn't hoard them. They hoarded them anyway, but that's not the point. The point is, though, that in the 60s, the early 60s, when basically every country used silver in their metals, you were using up half a billion, 600, 700 million ounces just to make current year coins, because Canada had silver coins. Australia had silver coins. The United Kingdom had silver coins. Italy, Mexico, the United States, Australia, all the countries were making silver coins for general circulation. Well, that demand has gone away. So when I started looking at this, to give you apples to apples type of comparison, we're looking at the period of time when the silver demand is basically breaks down to three areas, which you can break it down further, but industrial, obviously, you can break that into electronics, you can break that into solar energy, you could break it into photography, which there's less and less need for, ethylene oxides, and other types of things. And then you've got your silverware and your jewelry, which is always a pretty good constant demand. Silver is an attractive metal. It's a very shiny metal, especially when you polish it up after it oxidizes. And then you have people who are stackers or buying coins and bars across the world. Now, I've mentioned this before, but it is borne out by a lot. We did the other night, we had done a show, Chinese stackers versus American silver stackers, and we see that actually Americans buy more investment silver than the Chinese do, and the Chinese have about 4 times more people. Now, the Chinese clearly buy more gold. The numbers are astounding, and the Americans buy very little gold. But America's per capita buy a decent amount of silver. Americans, I think, benefit from channels like Matt's Silver Fortune, Truth Never Told, all the silver channels, goldsilver.com. There's a lot of what some people might call silver pumping or just silver promotion, but silver has been very much promoted since the financial crisis in 2009 as an investment metal in the United States. I don't have the charts here right now, but we do know that from 2010, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, we saw massive demand in silver coinage in American Silver Eagles. 40 million, 42 million, 44 million, and 47 million ounces in the 1 ounce form of American Silver Eagles were sold in 2015, and then that fell off to about 36 million in 2016, 18 million in 2017, and it's about 14 million in 2018. I did send out to the Smaulgld patrons earlier today, a chart showing 2017 versus 2018. So if you check your patron emails, you can see that chart. But not getting into the U.S. Mint, that's more specific. What I want to talk about here now is you're looking at silver demand by sector in 2006. And this gives you a snapshot about what silver demand looked like for about 15, 20 years. Basically 70% industrial, and then the rest was mostly silverware, jewelry, and little investment coinage. You know, you had the American Silver Eagles came out in 1986, and they sold 5, 6, 7, 8 million. They never really sold more than 10 million American Silver Eagles until the financial crisis. And that's when I said a lot of these YouTube channels came online and a lot of silver promotion happened. But before that, the American Silver Eagle, I should have had that chart up here, but they was not a big seller. It's become a big seller, and all of a sudden it's moving. We're having the worst year last year. 2017 was the worst year since 2017, and obviously it looks like we're going to sell fewer American Silver Eagles this year than last year, even though the second half of the year is better than the second half of 2017. All right, so if you're looking at this chart, you see 69.4, 70% of silver demand was eaten up by industry. And a lot of that back then, a little more of it then was photography, but we flipped whatever we've lost in photography, we've picked up pretty much in solar. And then the jewelry, 25%. And this is about, give or take, all these numbers are about total demand, about 1 billion ounces. About 1 billion ounces. Okay, so that's 2006, and that was like that for the longest period of time. But now let's go to 2015. Now 2015 was the year when we saw massive silver demand in the form of American Silver Eagles, Canadian Maple Leafs, Mexican Silver Libertads. And also, that was the year that the Perth Mint came out with the Perth Mint Silver Kangaroo, the Australian Silver Kangaroo. And the reason they came out with that was it was to meet market demand, because the U.S. Mint had run out of planchets and was unable to meet current demand. Even though they sold 47 million that year, they would have sold more, but they were offline for about 3 weeks around August or September. And the Perth Mint, which makes planchets and has silver refining, they were able to step up, and they sold 3.5 million of those 1 ounce Australian Silver Kangaroos that year. And that year also saw an incredible amount of silver rounds and bars being sold. A lot because you just couldn't get the government minted coins, and some preference. So the Silver Institute had put out their initial numbers, and I'm not showing you those, but I had written to them and explained that I thought that they had estimated the silver round and bar numbers, and they had a lower number. It didn't really increase much. And they revised their numbers, and their numbers for the rounds and bars, and their numbers for the sovereign mints pretty much matched mine, because I added up the U.S. Mint, the Canadian Mint, the Austrian Mint, the Perth Mint, the Mexican Mint, German Mint. I had as many mints in there as I could. We both had about the same number, but they had a much lower round and bar number. And I had known just from listening to Silver Doctors, they interviewed the Sunshine Minting Company, and they were mentioning how much silver they were selling, and they're one of the prime providers to the U.S. Mint of those planchets. Remember, the U.S. Mint doesn't mint Silver Eagles. They kind of outsource the planchet, they get the blank, and then they stamp the Silver Eagle and the Lady Liberty on the front. So they make them, but they don't actually make the round and then stamp it into a Silver Eagle. They pre-purchased the rounds, and they ran out of those. But anyway, so here's finally what I did was I took my numbers that I had, and I added up the silver coins and bars, and eventually Silver Institute did update the numbers, so these numbers would in effect be like their numbers, but these are my updated numbers. And that particular year, in 2015, look what had happened. The silver coin and bar demand went from 5% to 25%. We're going to talk about this tomorrow. This probably was problematic for the idea of having enough silver on hand for industry, not just from a strategic point of view from the United States, but globally. Because these are global numbers, and if silver, which has historically been, or had been, we'd forgotten about carving out a certain amount of silver to make coins, it's, in the 60s, and now all of a sudden you got to worry about stackers buying Silver Eagles, buying Canadian Maple Leafs, buying all types of silver investment products. Well, now you have an issue, which John Kennedy mentioned back in 1963, that when there's a silver shortage, if you're using silver for coins, there's a silver shortage if people are hoarding it for investment. Now, there isn't a silver shortage when you have investment numbers like you had before. 5%, that's, you can handle 10, 15, 20, 50, 80 million ounces of silver. But once you get into like 250 million ounces, those types of numbers, they went as high as close to 300 million ounces in 2015. That's too much, because now you're taking a third of the silver that's produced every year simply to be hoarded. It's not even used. You can't even justify it from a point of view that it's being used as money. It's being used as a store of value. And if that store of value could be better used in industry, then industry suffers, and then you have a shortage. So I think at that point I was writing a lot about how if this continues, we might have a silver shortage, because we saw that massive shift from 5% to 25%, and in 2016 it went even higher. We were projecting to do 60 million in American Eagle sales. Through the first 5 months of 2016, the sales of American Silver Eagles were even higher than they were in 2015, that record year of 47 million. And then sales fell off the table, and they've been falling ever since. But look at this. Just keep the snapshot in mind here. You got less than half of the silver demand going to industrial demand. But then watch what happens the next year. We had a half decent year in 2016, and Silver Eagle says, but all of a sudden now, because we sold fewer investment silver products, you start to see the percentage of silver that's going to satisfy investment demand, the silver coins and bars. It's now at a fifth. It's at 20% down from 25% plus. And you can see there's always this 25% silver and jewelry. I mean, that people are always going to buy a certain amount of silverware, not in the United States, but a certain amount of jewelry as well. And people will buy more jewelry when the price goes lower. People who have middle-class incomes in India, China, they're not stackers, but they'll buy a necklace. You can buy a necklace $10, $12, $15, a ring, same price. And in Mexico, they do that. They do that all over the world. People have silver jewelry. It's not, remember, it's 85 times cheaper than gold. But you can see here in 2016, that percentage drops to 20%. Now, last year, we saw a continued decline in silver investment demand, as somewhat reflected. I mean, the U.S. Mint numbers are somewhat indicative of overall investment silver demand. After all, the Silver Eagle is the number one investment product for silver. And now you can see 2017, these are newer charts with a newer program. Now you're down to less than 15%. In 2017, 14.3%. And industrial is now hanging over 60%. And you can see silverware and jewelry is now at where it normally is, about 25%. So it seems that the jewelry demand pretty much stays the same. I would imagine that would go down if the price rose significantly. And perversely, if the price rose significantly, you might see the investment silver demand go higher, probably because the reason the price would be higher would be because of the investment demand. I actually believe that the lever on price eventually will be the investment silver demand in physical form, because that's the only one that doesn't remain constant. All the stuff about industry, if you look at the industry numbers, and I'm going to show you that number in a minute before we do 2018, they're pretty constant. Despite this nonsense about, it's not nonsense, it's hype, that there's so much demand for silver in industry and all these new uses that are coming up for. A lot of the new uses use nano silver, and a lot of the base uses like electronics and solar, they find ways to use less silver so that the amounts that they actually need, and you'll see in a minute, are not that dramatic. But here you see 2017 now, coins and bars. This is getting people who need the silver industry more comfortable, down from 25% down to 14%. Now, it's not at 5% like it was in 2006, but you can see it's gone down. Now, this year we're projected to go even lower. Now, check this chart out. Stunning, right? Stunning. Here we go. 2018. Now we're down to 13%. And the reason for that is, well, you guessed it, less demand for silver investment products like American Silver Eagles, rounds, bars, and the like in 2018. I expect that number to tick up by the end of the year just because we're having a pretty decent November and probably have a decent December, so that might tick up a bit. But you can see industrial goes up to 61%, and then silverware, goes up a bit, 26%. So that is your dramatic change in silver demand from 2006, when coins and bars were 5%, all the way up to 25% in 2015. That was a dramatic increase. But look at the dramatic fall off we now have. From 2015 to 2018, we've gone from 25% of silver demand for coins and bars and rounds down to 13%. But let's take a look now at what I was promised you, that chart on silver demand by sector. And here you go. Well, there's one thing I would take away from this chart if I didn't know anything. I don't know anything about silver. Let's assume I know nothing about silver. I only know what a chart is, okay? So I look at a chart, and I don't even see silver demand by sector. And I see the first line, the first 4 bars. And I say to myself, okay, in 2015 was higher than 2016, 17, and 18. But pretty much, I don't see much of a change in the first set. Then I go to the second set. And I see the blue bar is high, the red bar is low, the yellow bar is even lower, and the green bar is lower than the yellow bar. And from that I can determine that whatever that chart means is there's a decline there in demand. And then I go over to the industrial demand, and I see it's basically flat overall. All right, so if you look at it, silverware and jewelry, this is showing us that silver and jewelry demand is a percentage. And also, these are the numbers. They're about 250 million ounces a year. These are not percentages. These are in millions of ounces. But look at the coin and bars. You go from about 292 million ounces all the way down to 142 million ounces in the green. So the silver coins and bars has gone from 292 to 142, and that is a significant decline. And then you see the overall industry hasn't really moved at all. So when you see that type of movement, you can see that the most volatile portion of all this is the investment demand. And I don't know if anyone did anything to discourage people from buying silver, but we have seen a 50% drop in the amount of silver people buying globally, and American Silver Eagle sales are down 60-70%, even more so. So I think if those concerned about the investment demand potentially eating into the industrial demand, well, they're happy now because they don't have that threat anymore. And, I've done reports on this back in 15 and 16 that if that blue line there, the 292 million, got much higher, then you'd have trouble with either shortage or you'd have to have the price go a lot higher. And I had speculated if just Americans were to save in physical gold, just small percentages of the workforce, 1%, 2%, and just bought small percentages or invested small amounts of their income or their salary in silver, that number could easily double, and that would really put a strain on supplies. But of course, that hasn't happened and doesn't look like it's going to happen. And that was only the United States. And so silver as an investment metal, the total amount, if you look at 142 million ounces, that's basically it. So you're talking, you're not really talking very much money. You're talking 18. You're talking pocket change in terms of overall investment. It's really not much. And when it's at where it is now, it's non-existent. Now, that doesn't mean, though, this is actually when you look at something, and this isn't hype or anything, and it's not a projection, but this is the type of market that is ripe for a bubble. It's a tiny market. It's definitely at a very low price, and it wouldn't take much to light a fire under it. And I think a fire could be lit under it not for the right reason, just because someone knows that they can manipulate it higher. Just because it wouldn't take much to get in there and to shake things up. The best markets to manipulate are the small markets, because you can go in there with a little bout of spoofing and so on, as we've seen, and drive a market in a particular direction. Now, generally, what we've seen with the silver market is driving it lower, but the same tactics can be used probably to drive it higher or increased physical demand. All right, let's go over to our comments and see what we got here. Well, Not Me is here. Oh, by the way, if anyone wants, I'm trying to think if I have copies of it. I think I have. Yeah, let me not make that offer on the old silver reports. They're out of date, so I don't want to send them to you. Okay, Not Me. Demand changing equals game changing. Tune in and see. By the way, I have a poll up, and I don't know if it's working. Let's see. I think they go What happens here? Looks like I got cut off. I don't know if you see the poll. I think you got cut off here. Live chat. Nope. Came back. I don't know if you guys see the poll. I put up a poll asking you when you thought the best time to have these live streams would be. Whether it would be at this time, whether it be earlier in the day. The link, let me leave you the link because I don't see anyone. I don't even see the poll. No poll. P-O-L. Here, P-O-L-L. I'll give you that poll, and if you, that's not coming up. All right. We'll have to run that some other time. What time you guys want to do this? All right. Let's get to your comments. Crypto Shrugged Author is here. Hello. Angelo Del Quadro is here. Silver Fortune. I can't decide if this title is supposed to be sarcastic or serious. Right? It's substantive sarcasm as we determined. And Pablo's talking about Mr. Acosta. NYC Bit is here. Kermash. Acosta is a sensationalist, not a journalist. Yeah, I mean, there's a rule in journalism that the story shouldn't be about you. He is there to make a point. He's not there to ask questions. The way I would handle it, if I wanted to make a point, I would ask my question, I'd get the answer, I'd ask a follow-up, then I go back and write whatever scathing thing I'd want to say about the answer. But I wouldn't try to debate the guy there on the spot. And if he says, hand over the microphone, I'd hand over the microphone either out of respect or just I didn't want to get kicked out. But I guess he wants to be kicked out, and I guess he's making a name for himself. He is famous now as a journalist, not because he's covered any wonderful stories, but because he's had the either audacity, courage, or rudeness to just harass the president at press conferences. Silver is manipulated. Silver is good for spoofing, says Pablo. Silver Fortune. You should go into Silver Institute's estimate of extra silver demand as a result of EVs. It's somewhat significant, honestly. How technologically advanced ICE cars are, they already use a fair amount. Yeah, but I've looked at all these numbers, and basically, we haven't seen any real... They say there's tightness in supply. I don't know what that means. Anyone ever try to place an order? The only time there was ever an issue in the last 10 years in trying to get silver, like as a person, was during 2015 when the American Silver Eagles ran out. We had that again this year, but that's not a shortage. You know what that is? That's like people saying when you can't get hamburgers that there's a beef shortage. No, it just means there's not enough patties, that they haven't caught up to, the machine hasn't caught up to making the beef into hamburger patties. So if you're at a picnic and they run out of hamburgers because they haven't made them into patties, that's not a beef shortage, it's a hamburger shortage. And right now there isn't. I think there could have been close to a silver shortage if they had continued to make the Silver Eagles and sell them when they were needed. Now what happened was there was spillover, and a lot of that demand did go into those silver Australian kangaroos. But then again, once they got back online, they sold what they were able to sell, and the numbers topped out. They topped out at an annualized rate of about 60 million. And that was probably too high. I think they couldn't have kept that up, but it immediately fell down. VW put 50 billion to their brand. EV, nice chart. 2018. I think we answered all those. I think we got through all the charts. Roger Henley. Silver Eagles sales dropped because people who acquired them in YouTube feel buying frenzy ran out of money. That's probably true. I think part of the reason that if there's manipulation in the price, one of the reasons that they would do it is to discourage people from hoarding. They said that back in 1974. The whole purpose of the futures market, one of the reasons is to discourage hoarding. People trade paper contracts. So a lot of people who bought Silver Eagles 2012, 13, 14, 15, the price is going down. It's a bargain, it's a bargain, it's a bargain. And then nothing happens and the price never goes up. And you do kind of, if you've bought a lot, you get discouraged and you don't want to buy anymore. And that's definitely one thing that could have happened and why the demand dropped off. That, if I had done this chart from the one you're looking at earlier, you would have seen the middle bunch, silver coins and bars, that would have been on an ascendancy. But instead, since 2015, you see it going down. All right. I wonder if there's a correlation between Silver Eagle sales and a spike in YouTube channel subscribers. Actually, you can check that, I believe. If you go to that website, what's it called? Social Blade, you can see I don't know how far back it goes, but you could do a comparison of that. I'm not going to do it, but that'd be interesting. But you could get the American Silver Eagle numbers and you can compare them to the growth in subscribers. Are these charts just for the USA or the world? These are the Silver Institute numbers. Well, I don't have any numbers up, but these are the Silver Institute numbers that are global. I do have the U.S. Mint. I have all the individual. That's why I was thinking I would send some stuff out to people if they wanted it, but it's out of date. I sent out today to the patrons the current U.S. Mint numbers, and I'm probably going to be sending them the other Mint data. And in that email, I also sent them historical 2015, 16, and 17 data. So if you want to become a Smaulgld patron, you can do that, and you'll get those emails. I've decided not to do the not to do the report this year. It's just very time consuming, and I also did videos that went along with that. So I'm just going to make the charts and ship them out to the patrons, and then without all the commentary and so on. All right, let's see. What else do we got? Pablo Pina. Smaulgld equals game changer for silver coin and bar demand. Thanks, Miser. Smaulgld, the silver game changer. Yes, I got to come up with a game changer mug. Smaulgld's view is in contrast with Illuminati silver, no pumper or backing the truck. I don't think Illuminati silver pumps. Well, I don't know. I haven't listened in a long time. I remember when that channel first came out, people were against him because he wasn't predicting higher prices and he was debunking. We tell you the truth about silver. I remember that. He was debunking the silver shortage back in 2015 or so. Sun Tzu, Chinese one belt, one rolled, gold back yuan endorsed Smaulgld. Yes, one belt, one road, gold back yuan. Kermash, I'm doing my part. Got 1,000 ounces this year. First year stacking. Whoop, whoop, LOL. Well, that's a lot of silver. That's a real lot of silver. It's 2 monster boxes. All right, can see the poll, but didn't answer as it makes no difference for me in Australia. Oh, so you guys can see the poll. All right. It doesn't make a difference? Even 8 hours doesn't make a difference? All right. Well, you'll just have to catch up the next day, or you're here now. You just have to email me. 4:20 Pacific time is good for Shark Air. Well, that's now. That's pretty much around now. Batman told me, Smaulgld, protect Silverham City, bring back common sense to the people. Lois Kermash says, Lois for White House Press. Loco 1, you're right, Luis. Hola, amigo, ¿qué tal? Yo no soy, mi nombre no es Luis, es Luis. The market is ripe for a bubble. Keep stacking with these low prices. Well, you know, my research says the silver price spikes and dives every 30 or so years. Now, that would mean we'd be on pace for 2041, but maybe it happens earlier. Who knows? Shark Air, Provident Metal is out of 10-ounce bars this morning. That's probably because the guy who runs Provident Metal was over on Salivate Metal. I want to express a multitude of gratitude. That is a great channel. If you don't know it, Salivate Metal, Silver Fortune, great channels, great hosts over there. But yeah, Salivate Metal had the guy from Provident Metals. He probably ran a special for people watching. I don't know if he did, but apparently it was well received. And you know, the thing about bullion dealers is you have to trust them. It's nice to see the guy who runs it on there yakking silver with Salivate Metal. I want to express a multitude of gratitude. Click and subscribe. I I just picked up a few 10-ounce silver bars today, bingo boy. By the way, if you're interested in picking up, and it's not investment advice, but it does help out the channel, and you pay no more or less than if you visited these sites directly, you might as well, I'm not telling you what to do, I'm asking you can go to SD Bullion, Money Metals Exchange, or Golden Eagle Coins through the Smaulgld links. And I'll leave you those. And you can buy directly from there. It's the same price. It's just that if you use this link, that's SD Bullion, I get a small commission. And here is the Money Metals Exchange. And I would say, I would like to express a multitude of gratitude. If you do so, open a Coinbase. There you go. Well, there's Money Metals Exchange. And also, there is the Litecoin and Bitcoin rounds, which are really cool, and they come from Golden Eagle Coins. They have, if you're interested in numismatics, they have a nice selection of numismatics. A lot of the bullion dealers don't bother with the numismatics. They prefer just to sell the bullion, but Golden Eagle Coin sells both, so you could check them out if you like collect the Lincoln pennies or stuff like that, individually dated coins. A lot of people don't do that, but I think coin collecting is not as popular as it once was. All right, let's see what else we got here. Multitude of gratitude. Hoping the silver prices drop so they can back up the truck. Miser, any way to find out if Kazakhstan is getting silver? Well, yeah, what I do is I track the central banks of India, of China, of Kazakhstan, of Russia. They don't list, this is my point about silver, they don't list silver as a reserve asset. Now, Kazakhstan is irrelevant in the world. When I say it's irrelevant in the world, I mean not because the people are irrelevant, but the size of it, the size of the economy is tiny. The only reason that Kazakhstan, I don't have time to do that, but Kazakhstan I've been covering for the last 3 years for gold because they actually are one of the few central banks that adds gold to their reserves on a consistent basis. In fact, they've added gold to reserves 72 months in a row. That's 6 years in a row. But Kazakhstan's relationship to gold is because they mine it. They've gone from 20 tons a year to 80 tons a year. So they basically, because they have a currency that isn't worth very much, the tenge, and they basically convert their domestic currency into their domestic gold mining supply, and they put that into their central bank. Russia does the same. People don't realize the reason Russia, not only are they de-dollarizing, they have a terrible currency. It makes total sense for them to put 3/4 to 7/8 of their domestic mining production into their central bank in the form of gold that they buy from the miners. But Kazakhstan, even if it was into gold, into silver, it wouldn't be any significant amount because they don't have that much. They wouldn't be investing in silver. And I would be more interested, and I do follow the domestic silver demand and imports into India, China, places with more significant populations, and they can just buy more silver. But we saw the other day, China doesn't invest much in silver. The Chinese people don't invest much in silver. It's mostly gold. India does. India has industry use for gold, silver. A lot of silver jewelry is very popular in India. So they do have a big demand for silver in India. Miser, wow, sounds like Sal. That's because I'm here with Lewis tonight. No, he's not. All right. Totally, all his impressions are awesome. Thank you, mate. All right, then let's see what we got here. All right, is 1,000 ounces of silver really a large amount of silver? Well, I mean, yeah, it depends on. It's not a lot of silver for a country, but 1,000 ounces of silver at current prices is going to set you back 14 large. If you think that's not a lot amount of silver, as they say, a salute. I mean, it depends on who you are. That's a lot of silver to me. $14,000. That's a decent amount. All right. Oh, I have to pump the mugs. I'm sorry. While you're here, remember, mugs can never go to zero. We got the new Smaulgld beer mug. We got the Smaulgld espresso mug. We've got the classic Smaulgld classic and super classic mugs. Actually, I'm going to put them up on the screen. And people have been sending me. I really love it. They send me their pictures of their Smaulgld mugs. You know, drinking out of them, putting liquor in them, putting coffee in them, putting their keys in them, someone put their entire silver stack in them. But you know what? What's his name did? Mr. Henley. He made a knockoff mug. Well, there's the mugs right there. But the one on the left is that's the super classic mug. You get that from Smaulgld directly. I mail that out myself. That's $23.99 with free shipping, priority shipping, handwritten note, and then the same with the one to the right. That's $19.99. That's the classic mug. That's got two sides of Smaulgld. This one, it's on one side. Then the travel mug that you're seeing there, that is available it's on the Smaulgld site, but it won't be delivered from me. It gets delivered by the manufacturer. I think it's 15% off tonight. And there's your smaller espresso mug below. And then also we have a new beer stein, which really took off. We sold a lot of those the first night that they were available. 22-ounce beer stein. We also have a 16-ounce frosted mug, but this one is a real beauty there. If you like beer or root beer or any type of beverage with a little foam on it, there's plenty of room in that Smaulgld mug. So here you can visit the Smaulgld store. I'll leave you that link. It does help the site out, and you get to have your Smaulgld products. All right. What else? They can probably do byproduct from gold mine. That's correct. Carl Joseph DeMarco, did you just say the Kazakh currency is Bengay? No, Bengay is for muscle aches and pains. But I called it the Tenge because I was calling it the Tenge, Tenge. And someone who I assume has knowledge, you could just be BSing me, he said the proper pronunciation is Tenge. So I've been saying Tenge since then. But I've been keeping track. If you go to the Smaulgld site, you can see all of the Kazakhstan game-changing gold purchases. TRP, 1,000 ounces is nothing compared to the 800 million ounces mined a year. That's right, but it's a substantial amount for an individual. Absolutely. 20K Canadian. Yeah, okay. Mugs never go to zero. And they are stackable. That is right, Miser. And you know what else? Oh, there was a funny story the other night. I don't think I even managed to find it. I don't think I managed to show it the other night. There was this big brawl where these women were battling and they had to break it up, and there was a big news story, and they were using mugs to beat each other up with. So one of the things about mugs is you can defend yourself with a mug. You can open carry mugs. They're very valuable. There's so many uses for mugs. I like to put, if you're a prepper, you're a hardcore prepper, and you want to have what you need when the excrement hits the fan, you want to have mugs because you can actually barter with mugs. I mean, you can barter. Not only can you barter with mugs, you can put your barter items in mugs, but also, one of the top prepper items is having your storable food. And if you have storable food, most of that storable food is dried, and then it has to be rehydrated. And where are you going to put your storable food? You can put Mountain House in a mug, and there you are. You have Mountain House, and you've got your Smaulgld Super Classic and Classic mugs. You can stack your mugs. So definitely get yourself a Smaulgld mug. You got to start somewhere. I mean, a Smaulgld mug is a very important part of anyone's prepper portfolio. And you know who also thinks that Smaulgld mugs are cool is this guy. Check this guy out. This guy's in the Smaulgld Mug Club. You get to become that when you become a Smaulgld patron for $25 a month. You get your Smaulgld mug and you can take pictures with your dog. Yep, stackable mugs. Carl Joseph DeMarco. Yeah, that's fine. The other night it was on sale. I think it was 30% off. I think it's 15% off now. It's a decent price. It's very good looking. Mine hasn't arrived yet. I ordered it the second I had it made. Well, yeah. I mean, that's like a bazooka. That's Stein. He says you can knock the hell out of someone with that Stein. I mean, the mugs they're like pistols, but the Stein is like a bazooka in your pocket if you carry that thing around. But again, not advocating violence. I'm not advocating that you buy Smaulgld mugs for anything other than their intended use or possibly self-defense. They are not to be used as offensive weapons, as that women's riot happened. And in fact, I think they broke the mug, which is really, really, really a crime against mugs. You want to keep your mug intact. All right, everyone. Well, I want to thank you all for listening. We'll see you again tomorrow night. We're going to do silver as a strategic metal. Strategic metal. Not as a stacking metal, not as an investment, but a strategic metal. So please make sure you join me tomorrow night. Thank you very much. I'll leave it up for a minute for any final comments. Sometimes people make great comments and I'm already offline, or they ask a question and then I don't answer it because I'm gone. So I will wait just a moment. Joe Blow is here. Nothing to respond to there. He says, hey, hello, Joe Blow. All right. Looks like we're going to sign off.